Okay, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are, whatever part of the world you're in. It's early in the morning here, where I am on the Pacific coast, and my guest today, who I'll be interviewing, Magenta Pixie, is in the British Isles. So we're coming at two different time zones, and I know many of you viewers are from all parts of the world. I thank you guys for tuning in and always being a part of the viewership here at Circle Healing Network. I'm your host today, Robyn McClendon, and I'm so excited to interview Magenta Pixie. She finished this year her book, Masters of the Matrix by Magenta Pixie, and you've just finished your second book, haven't you? We'll talk a bit about that. That's right.
Yeah.
Good. And so I came across Magenta on an interview that Michelle Walling, who was one of my very first people I interviewed when I started my channel on Blog Talk Radio 2 years ago. And she was so kind and so awesome to like be the first person to be interviewed on this little broadcast that had like 2 people listening to it. And that's the kind of heart that Michelle has. And I really appreciate the work that she's doing in the community. So you were on her show, Magenta, and I started listening to you, and I've just come across your work just about a month ago. And what's interesting is you've had a YouTube channel with a vast following for about 7 years now or so.
Since 2008. Yeah.
2008. Yeah. So quite long time, actually. And I really liked what you were saying about your work and et cetera. So I thought, oh, I would really like to interview you and have you on the show. But first I ordered your book on Amazon. So folks, you can go to Amazon and get it. You can also go to magentapixie.com, right? And can people get the book right directly from you as well?
No, there's a link on the website that will just take you to the Amazon site.
Okay, so I got it Amazon easy enough. 2 days it was here. I recommend everybody jump on Amazon, get this book. You guys are really going to love it. It's a beautiful read, and it answers so many of the questions, and it begins to address so much on an energetic level what so many of us are dealing with, and many of your viewers on this channel, what you guys are often talking about and commenting on, and we're talking and sharing about. So this is why I was delighted when Magenta said yes, and she worked me into her schedule. It took us a couple of weeks for us to work this interview into your schedule, but I do appreciate it because I know so many people will benefit from this. So many of our starseed brothers and sisters are listening to this, and they will really benefit from it. So I thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you. Thank you for asking me, Robyn.
So real quick, guys, and then I want Magenta just to jump in. You know that I like to just do conversations here. So you'll just be a part of our conversation. We've already started about 15 minutes ago just to get to know each other because this is our first time even talking outside of your assistant through emails arranging this for us. But what impressed me most when I was listening to the interview, Michelle Walling interview with you, Magenta, and I've shared this with you just a few minutes ago, was that when I was listening to you answer the questions, a lot of times, you know, when a person would say, well, do you think such and such and such and such? And you might say in your own mind, you'll say, well, I think that would be like, yes, blah, 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 you know? And so, and you might not know all the detail that they're saying, or you may not be able to say it their way, but it resonates before they say it. I think that's a key thing that I kind of go off of. I try to anticipate what's going to be said and see how it resonates with me internally. And that's sort of my guidepost to dealing with people in this community, you know, because in this truth community, there's so much, and there's still deception. I mean, you still have the dark forces that have, I believe, kind of come in and sort of change and manifest themselves in different ways to be confusing and to create a spirit of confusion. And I think actually you said something about that when I was listening to your recent talk on your new book about confusion being one of the, so I'll let you talk to that. But anyway, what I wanted to say to the viewers is that after listening to the interview for a while, you know, Magenta said something, I don't even remember what she said right now, but whatever it was, it carried a frequency that just caused me to start crying. I literally just started crying. And even if I asked myself why, I really couldn't say, well, it was this or that, you know. But and I said to you, I felt like it was a kinship, and it was a coming home feeling, a feeling like, oh my goodness, okay, this feels right, you know. And I'm always saying to my viewers, these are the kind of things that we have to look for. It is all about feeling, and it is all about our memory and remembering, because those are the signposts for us to know what we're doing and what we're trying to do. So I wanted to share that and just let you guys know why, you know, I felt called to do this interview. So Magenta, I'll let you open up and, you know, tell the viewers a bit about yourself, and just kind of go down whatever road you feel led to. All righty?
Okay. Well, very quickly, for anyone who doesn't know me or hasn't sort of heard of me or seen my work, I don't want to go too much into my journey, because I've spoken about that before, and I can talk about my journey for hours, so I'll be as brief as possible. I had experiences right from childhood, as many starseeds do. You know, as we were talking about earlier, you don't feel as though you've ever really shut down. And, you know, it's not as if you have a moment in your life where you just wake up. It's like you've always been awake. You've always known that there's more to this life than presents itself. You've always known that you're different. So that was me as a child. But I did get to a point where I got quite confused at one point in my life. So this is going back to late 1992, early 1993. I was getting confused because I was starting to sense things more and more from people. I was becoming psychic, but it was incredibly uncontrolled. I remember sitting at a party and I could hear the thoughts of everyone in the room. Not so much hear their thoughts, but I could pick up feelings from them and translate them, and I knew things, and I had no training in this. It was very overwhelming. And I remember sitting down one day and just saying to the universe, what's going on with me? You know, please help me. Please help me. You know, I'm going crazy. And then a couple of days later, I was offered an apartment, a flat. We call it a flat here in the UK. And I couldn't afford the flat on my own. I needed to find a flatmate. So I went asking all my friends, but no, they were all doing other things, and none of them wanted to move at that time. And I really wanted this lovely flat. And I remember going back home where my younger brother was 4 years younger than me, still living at home. And I was just saying, you know, I really want this flat. I can't find a flatmate anywhere. I'm going to have to give it up because I can't afford it on my own. I need to have somebody to share it with. And he said, well, I'll share with you. And I remember looking at my brother thinking, what? Because me and my brother had argued, and, you know, most of our childhood were always like fighting. So I thought, but something inside was saying to me, this is the right person. You are meant to be moving into a flat with your brother. I had no idea why. So said yes, went ahead and signed all the lease and everything, moved in. And it was literally a few days into living in this flat, when we were still sort of putting furniture away, I was really down with all this psychic stuff, and I thought, I can't talk to my brother. He won't understand. You know, it's not something I'd ever discuss with him. And he asked me what was wrong. I said, you won't understand. And he said, well, try me. And I said, okay, all right, then I'm sensing what people are thinking. I'm becoming telepathic in some way. Wherever I go, I can sense the thoughts of people. I can see things. I'm seeing beings from that aren't even real. I'm seeing other worlds superimposed into this one. So there you go. Basically, it's just, you know, crazy. And he said, I know what's happening to you. And basically, unbeknownst to me, he'd been studying spirituality and Zen philosophies and Buddhism and religion and meditation. He'd done Kung Fu. He was almost a black belt. I didn't see the relation between martial arts and spirituality because I was a complete beginner. So he had studied everything from a sort of pragmatic place. I was a total innocent. Didn't have a clue but it was me that all the stuff was happening to. So we were a perfect partnership at that time, because he was looking for the experience to validate the research he'd done for years. And he was 4 years younger than me. He'd started researching all this at like 16. And I had the sort of experience without the research. Yes, we'd both had experience in a way before. My father was a hypnotherapist, and he'd hypnotized us all as children. So he taught us all self-hypnosis, and there were a few experiences there that occurred, to the point with me where I was 11 when he started to hypnotize me. And in hypnosis, once I'd gone into hypnosis, I would actually talk back to him. But well, I guess you're a QHHT practitioner, so you know what I'm talking about. I didn't know. I was only 11. It wasn't me that was talking. It was this. Well, it was me, but you know what I mean. It was this other part of me.
And actually, I'm not a practitioner, but a friend of mine is. And so she actually did the sessions on me. But I do have an experience that I know what you mean from the other side of it all.
Right. Oh, I saw on your website that you'd got a connection there. I mean, I know now what it was, what was happening to me, but then at the time I didn't. And so my father would say to me, it's your subconscious mind, because the conscious mind is resting. So but to me, this subconscious mind felt like a person. It felt like an entity. It felt like a friend. So I used to call this part of me subby, as in short for subconscious. So I'd say, subby wants to talk to you, daddy. You know, so I'd go into hypnosis and subby would come forward. And I mean, subby would say things like how I'm doing at school, and why things were happening the way they were, and why I felt the way I did, and what I needed in order to be able to go forward. So subby knew all these things that I didn't know. So that had all started happening at age 11. But apart from that, there was nothing sort of tangible spiritually that I could put my finger on at the time, until I got to this place with my brother. And so the two of us kind of became spiritual partners again, without knowing. I now know that we can move into spiritual partnerships with others, and we work with others very much at the moment. We're in 2017. We're in a group spiritual partnership. There is a mass consciousness. We're working together in the millions right now, but we can also work in small groups and as partners and alone. But I didn't know any of this at that time. So to cut a long story short, my brother and I attended a spiritual, one of those spiritualist sessions where the medium was giving a demonstration, and I just blown away, never seen a medium work, thought he was amazing, and said to my brother, one day I'm going to do what that guy is doing, but I'm not going to be the same as him. I'm going to be doing it in some different way. I'm not sure how. And then it just came to me, I'm going to be a medium for other mediums. Because I didn't know the word starseed. I didn't know the word light worker. I didn't know any of that terminology. I just thought, and I remember thinking, well, that's crazy, because if there are other mediums, what would they want me for? You know, so I didn't understand what that meant at the time. So fast forward a little bit further, I remember walking into a bookshop, and it's the same thing that's happened to so many on a spiritual path. The Nine call this the meaningful subjective experience, where these things occur, these synchronicities and coincidences occur in your life. I walk into this shop, and there's this book hanging out of the bookcase, and just as I walk to the bookcase, it falls on the floor, and I bend down to pick it up, and it was called Channeling. And it was a small exercise book of meditations that taught you how to channel your spirit guide. I thought, that's it, that's me. I need to channel my spirit guide. Because it had happened before, when I was 11, I now know that the brain, once the brain works in that way, the brain remembers how to work in that way. It's the same with the body.
Exactly.
You know, there's memory there within the whole body. If you've done ballet at the age of 3 and then you don't do any exercise, and then you start maybe doing yoga in your 40s, it won't be long before you pick up the moves, because the body remembers what you did when you were 3 doing your ballet. And it's the same thing with the brain, but I knew none of this at the time. So very quickly I made contact. However, that contact was not necessarily of the light, and that's because I was very suggestible. My father said to me I was one of the best subjects for hypnosis, because I was incredibly suggestible, you know, to the point of being gullible as a child. I mean, people would tell me anything, I believe it, which is not necessarily a good trait on the one hand, but it's very good on another hand if it can be controlled and expanded and as a channel, it's a very good trait to have in your early learning, because it means you're open.
Exactly.
So in this book, it said, in the first few days or weeks of these exercises, you may meet some false guides. So lo and behold, I met lots and lots of false guides, and they were really quite funny and sweet. And in the exercise, it would say, ask the guide that comes to you. In meditation, you're sitting down, and you visualize another guide coming towards you and sitting down, and ask them, are you of Christ consciousness? They cannot say no if they are of Christ consciousness. That's what it said in the book. So I'm asking them all. Along comes this amazing looking, extraterrestrial being, and what looks like a master, and all these amazing beings. And I would ask them, are you of Christ consciousness? And repeatedly I would get, oh no, I'm not, you've got me. And I'd come out of meditation and say to my brother, it's just not working. I'm meeting all these beings, but none of them is of Christ consciousness.
Oh my goodness.
Meditation. I'm meditating morning, afternoon, and night. I'm setting my alarm clock to 3 o'clock in the morning. This is all in 1993. Setting my alarm clock early for 3 a.m. I now know 3:33 is a good time to meditate, but I thought 3 o'clock seemed good. So every night I'm waking myself up and doing extensive meditation at night, working with dream work. My brother was doing the same. And then eventually in meditation one day, and you were saying how when you heard me being interviewed by Michelle Walling, something that I said made you cry.
Yes.
But as I was saying to you before, that's not necessarily me or Michelle or our interview or what we said that made you cry. It is a connection with self, but it's connection with the true self. Mm-hmm. And in this reality where we've lived so many years alone, without being understood, being ridiculed, you're crazy, you're the weird one, and every thought, every idea you have, falls on deaf ears. And finally, for you, you're listening to something, and something obviously struck a chord with you, where someone out there is feeling the same as me. I'm on a resonance with this person, and it makes you, it's overwhelming. Well, this happened in meditation. What actually happened to me was I'm sat there expecting another session in meditation where I would meet this being that is not of Christ consciousness. And this entity, this being walked into my space in meditation, and something happened. The energy from this being was so, all I can liken it to is, if you could see it, it was so brilliant. It's almost not possible to look at this brilliant light, but you can see it. And all the chakras opened, my heart chakra, my whole body. Mm-hmm. And I just felt that same feeling, and I started to cry.
Okay.
So when this being came to me, I said, I didn't even need to ask. I said, you are of Christ consciousness, aren't you? I mean, there was just no way. So it was a feeling rather than a visual. And this is a clue here. When you're seeing something without feeling, it's good. But this is like the early days of clairvoyance or precognitive vision. When it's combined with all the other senses, the energy body starts to work. So the chakras are working, the emotions are there. Feeling is so important. And it's combined with the clairvoyant sight or clairaudient hearing. Then you've got this. Yeah, then you've got this balance. So you know that and what's actually happening is the brain waves are working in a different way. There's another, what the 9 would call connections being made in parts of the brain that most humans, when you look at the majority of humans on this planet, most humans are not making these connections. This is what we are doing, and it's happening within the DNA as well. We're connecting these strands within the DNA. That's what's happening on a sort of biological level, but we perceive this in our subjective experience. So we see these visuals. So I then began a communication with this being. I named this being White Spirit. Presented to me actually as a Zulu warrior, but was had this energy, this intelligence, this light. Told me he was a 5th dimensional being, was a past life version of me, had never incarnated on the physical realm, and was learning from me just as much as I was from him, that sort of thing. So I would come out of meditation and I would tell my brother, I met my spirit guide and his name's White Spirit and this is what he said. So my brother would then ask questions of me. So I'd try to remember the questions, go into meditation. Are you hearing me okay?
No, I can hear you well. I'm sorry. It's like all of a sudden my little puppy comes up and he's like,
lovely.
whining, like, just lay down. And I didn't want to interrupt you. And I'm like, I'm trying to tell him.
Oh no, I love little puppy dogs. I've got a dog too. It's great.
Yeah, I have a little Bichon. He's a sweetie.
Oh, have you? How lovely. Oh,
yeah.
Anyway, so yeah. So my brother would ask me all these questions. I'd try and remember the questions, go into meditation, access White Spirit. And yes, I could always find him. He wasn't always there at first, but he'd come to me, go through all the questions in meditation, get the responses, come out of meditation, try and remember, tell my brother. And this went on for a while. But my brother was so eager to know the answers to, when he realized I'd made a connection. And he was good because he wasn't like, yeah, this is definitely a connection. But neither was he, what a load of rubbish. He was open to this. And it was good because he was questioning. How do I know that you're a spirit guide? How do I know you're from the fifth dimension? Can you, so there was, that was
good. Yeah, that kind of questioning was really good to sort of.
Exactly. And I didn't know how to question White Spirit because to me, I'm like, well, yeah, he's a spirit guide. What more do I need to know?
I see him, I feel him, I sense him. I mean, it's very real to you.
Exactly. I didn't
when you're dealing with it. But the other person, it's like it's so still etheric that they're like, well, how do you know?
Exactly. So kind of my brother taught me to be, and of course, White Spirit encouraged it. He said, this is great that you are questioning. So then I learned that White Spirit wanted me to question him. So I would start doing it as well and never really stopped that. But then one day he asked me this huge bunch of questions. I mean, asking about concepts I'd never heard of. And I'm trying to remember what he's saying. And all of a sudden it was like this, all I can explain it as is it was like a switch. It was like 1 minute I was stood in the living room in the waking state, and the next minute there was a switch, and it was like I was simultaneously in the waking state and in meditation at the same time with my eyes open. But how I perceived this was White Spirit was there. I could see him, I could feel him, and I wasn't in meditation. I didn't have my eyes closed. I was awake. Which is what I'd wanted to do, but of course it hadn't happened. And of course, when you desperately want something, you create the energy of desperation, which keeps you in a place of not having what you're desperate for. Exactly. So when I let it go and thought, well, I've connected with him in meditation, then it happened. So I said to my brother, White Spirit's here. And he's saying, what do you mean? I said, he's here. I can see him. I can hear him. He said, I don't have to go in meditation. He's right with me. So that started the beginning of my, mediumship stroke channeling. And I lived with my brother for about 6 months. Together we had an amazing summer. The synchronicities were happening every day. We were bumping into people who were authors and spiritual teachers and healers and all sorts. And White Spirit said to me, because I couldn't believe every single day, synchronicity after synchronicity, insight after insight, download after download. It was so overwhelming. And we both became quite ungrounded and got to the point where it's difficult to be around sort of normal people because we were just off on this other planet. And so I was being trained as well very quickly. So everywhere we went, White Spirit was saying, see that person, tell me about this person, what do you see? And I'd say, well, I see this. And they go, look at this bit. And, so I'm getting trained and I'm being told about permissions and etiquette and how I'd had a contract with these people and I was allowed to look. But sometimes I'd look and they'd say, no, you can't look there. That's personal. So all this teaching was going on. And so where was I? I was saying...
you were talking about the summer that your brother and you were having, all the synchronicities that were happening during that period of time, the additional 6 months that you guys were living together.
That's right. We were together for 6 months and it was amazing. And White Spirit said to me, what you are going through now, because I'd done a lot of drama in my life and so had my brother. We'd both been in the theatre, had parents in the theatre and and you know, extras on TV and that sort of thing. So we used theatre terminology. So White Spirit said to us, this, what you are going through now, this period of time, is a dress rehearsal. I'm like, oh, right, because we know how important the dress rehearsal is. It's like the last rehearsal before the show. So you have to get it right. But I will let you know when it's the actual show time, the actual performance. And we thought, great. So we thought maybe, you know, next week. Nothing. Next month, no. So we
next
were never
year.
told. Yeah, no.
No.
Never told when it was performance time. I'd question: is it the show time yet? Is this the show? No, this is the dress rehearsal. And I found books. I found other channeled books that I started to read. You know, that were helping me. Does this mean it's showtime? No, it's dress rehearsal and all this. And so my brother and I went our own separate ways. After 6 months of living in the flat, he went off and was in a relationship, and I moved on and did something else. And we were still in contact, but we weren't working together spiritually anymore. That was a difficult time actually to separate, because there was actually like a separation. It was a very short, quick, fast tracking spiritual partnership, and then we moved away and we're working on our own. So I carried on doing you know, the odd tarot reading and spiritual reading for a few people, but I kept what I did very quiet, didn't tell anyone. My family didn't know, my brother and my father only, and some friends that I knew that I was very close to, but most friends I had didn't know what I did. I kept it secret, and I was never told when it was showtime. You know, that never happened. And it got to the point where I'd bump into my brother. We'd see each other maybe 4 or 5 years later, and I'd say, do you remember that crazy summer? You know, we were thinking about, there's a big change taking place on the planet. Everyone on the planet, they're all changing in some way. And it's going to be a big global thing. And I'd even had visions where I was speaking into a microphone, talking to people all over the world, but mostly in America. And I said, do you remember those visions? You know, we were just a bit crazy, you know. And I actually thought it's not happening. But then I'd go home and I'd think, it is going to happen one day. Yes. I just know it. But it just, so it's such a long time, from 1993. So fast forward to, as I said, I continued to work spiritually, privately, for myself and with the odd few friends, and did tarot readings and connected with White Spirit, and that was all you know, good, and they helped me many times in my life, in many personal situations. And I continued with lots and lots of training without really knowing that training was going on.
You never know that you're actually doing the training. I know exactly what you mean. I can relate to this.
Well, you don't, and this is the thing. I now know that every starseed will have been trained from birth.
Yeah.
Now, the reason for this is going into the sort of the plan for Earth on a more physical level. I'm not looking necessarily at the extraterrestrial higher dimensional energies. I'm looking here at the third dimension. There are a group of individuals on this planet who are have an agenda of wanting to control the rest of the planet. I'm sure everybody who's in the truth movement and the New Age movement and Lightworker community will have heard of the Illuminati, the elite, the cabal, whatever you want to call them. So, but
you know, it's funny to that point. Just recently, I was reading something, and I was doing just frequency and energy stuff around what I was reading. And of course, you know, I've heard the Illuminati forever. And what came to me was, when we think of illumination, you know, we're illuminated. And then it's the first time that I thought illumin, not I. So the Illuminati is, you know, like the idea of it being broken down to illumin. They're not illumin. So illumin, and then not, and then I, meaning back to them as the individual. And it's so amazing how these words will tell you exactly what the energy patterns are on them. So I just threw that in because I was thinking about that.
That's great. And on one level, they're not illumined. It's correct. No. However, on another level, they are illumined. Mm-hmm. But that's depending on which part.
Which way we look at it.
Body. Yeah, the heart, the third eye. So yeah, there's the cabal, the Illuminati, whatever name you want to call it. Now, these individuals on a physical level one of the strategies of control for this planet will be to have members of their organization or order or family, whatever word you want to call, that will work in all the different areas of the system. So they will be trained from birth. Literally, they will be trained to be in politics or in history or in teaching or in spirituality, or wherever they go, they will be trained from birth for a specific reason. And that gives them the edge, really, because they have these extremely well-trained individuals that are dedicated to one particular pathway in life, like media, for example, and they know exactly what they're doing from childhood. So it gives them, or so they thought, it gives them an advantage over the rest of humanity. What they didn't realize, and what they've never known until now, and it doesn't matter that they know it now because it's kind of too late, and you know, the plans of the light, the service to others energy, would be kept out of the consciousness of man, so that they couldn't be read, they couldn't be accessed by that group until it's such time as the endeavor has already occurred. So what that is a counteracting energy. The starseeds were trained from birth too.
Exactly.
From birth, but not you know, with the Illuminati children, they would have been in classrooms, actually being physically third dimensionally trained. With the starseed children, they're trained through life, and nobody would ever have known because they're all in disguise.
And to your point, it's so funny because I'm sitting here thinking about exactly an example in my own life, because my story winds similarly through life as yours, where I didn't realize I was being trained along the way, especially with energy and frequency patterns and stuff like that, as a way to understand what I'm resonating with and what I'm dealing with in my environment. Like, a lot of information will just sort of download in me once I recognize a frequency pattern. So, but to your point, in my early 20s or mid 20s or so, I had started a business, one of my first businesses, which was in event planning. And it was in the Washington, D.C. area. And it was called Washington Affairs. And it was just a creative outlet for me, because I've always been creative. So I was, oh, this is a legitimate business, but it's still fun and creative and what have you. And actually, the way I came upon it is I was working in the DC government. I was an executive assistant to a council member. And it turns out I met Dionne Warwick because she was planning her first AIDS concert, an event in the DC area. So I ended up being the person who helped plan the event and was her contact person there. So then once I did that and got a lot of contacts, I thought, oh, this is fun. So I went and continued. Fast forward, as you say, I thought, how do you know, nobody was into events management, and you try to educate people. Why should they pay you to help plan an event? So one of the things I thought, well, knowing the DC area, was if I got a top secret security clearance, it would make me, and there weren't very many event planners, businesses in the area, but there were a couple. So I thought, well, that will separate me from the pack, because nobody's thought about that. And, you know, it takes a while to get top secret clearance. So I went through and got it for my company. No sooner, this is a true story, no sooner than we had been approved for it, maybe just a couple of months, I get a call from the then Vice President of the United States, secretary. They needed a state dinner planned, and they didn't have anybody to do it, and they had to have somebody with top secret clearance. That vice president was George, the Daddy Bush, that then went on to be president. I worked directly with George Bush Sr. He was a very hands-on person in doing events. At the time, I didn't know about the whole system and infrastructure of all that stuff. You know, it was just a guy that was with Ronald Reagan getting ready to be president. But it wasn't, but in working closely with him, I mean, he was a very hands-on, he wanted to know where everything was. It was a very get along, easy to deal with person. But it wasn't until later, as I continued to understand what was going on and things were opening to me, that I was in training to recognize that frequency and those energy patterns.
Yeah.
And so, to your point, something that just seems like, oh, you know, you're doing this, oh, you're elevating your business or whatever. You later look back and thought, wow. And it has really helped me, even in dealing now in the truther community. It's really helped me to understand and recognize various energy signatures and know how to deal with them. So to your point.
Yeah. Absolutely, absolutely. And the way I found out about this was when I discovered that the training system that the Illuminati children went through. And that's when the 9 came in and showed me the starseed training system. And I realized, you know, so the counteracting energies, you know, have to occur. It's light and dark, and it has to be there within a polarity system. You can't have one without the other. So it's a divine plan, if you like. So yeah, the next thing really, I think a few years, it must have been around the year 2000, the millennium, 2000, 2001, something like that. I remember talking to a friend of mine who was quite knowledgeable spiritually and had worked with other channels and mediums and had helped me a lot. And I remember him saying to me, can you ask your guides a question for me? And I said, what do you mean guides? I've only got one. And he said, oh no, they're always a collective. I said, are they? So I remember asking White Spirit, and he said, yes. And once I knew that, he told me it was time to leave and that a different energy would be coming in, a different guide. But and I was really upset about that. But he was explaining that it was still him, that it was an upgraded version of him, and that he was me, which I already knew by that time, that he was a fifth dimensional version of me, one of my past lives, future lives. This is what I never understood. How could he be a past life if he's never incarnated on the physical reality? That was one of the first questions. And that's how I knew that past, present, and future, there's no such thing. You know, your past life aspect, you can speak to a past life aspect that's never incarnated, because that past life aspect's a future life aspect.
That makes sense. That's a good way of breaking it down. Yeah.
So yeah, I can go more into that, but so yeah, basically there was an upgrade that took place. The White Spirit from the fifth dimension morphed into or left, and a new entity stepped in. And this new entity was a light being, very similar energy to White Spirit, but more expanded. There was more sort of there was more of a network there, a neural network. I now know that this is the visual presentation of my own brain and DNA, you know, which is the being, you know, your brain and your DNA. And the changes is the being. It's the same thing.
Exactly.
So this presented as an angel, but I didn't call it an angel because I thought it can't possibly be an angel, you know. So they had big white wings, and sometimes a human face, sometimes the face of a bird, but there was just one. And then very shortly afterwards, and within a matter of days of the transition from White Spirit to this one angelic being, the being morphed into a group, and I instantly thought that's the collective that my friend had said. They're always a collective. The word collective had triggered this process, and I counted, and there were 9 of them. And that's when I started to work with them. And you know, then I had even more training going on, but I still had no idea that I was being trained to do anything outside of my own life and my own reality. Despite the visions I'd had in the past of speaking to people, predominantly in America, I still didn't put this together. And then it was in 2008 that they'd been coming in with all sorts. I mean, I was being told about 0 point and duality, polarity, the extraterrestrial situation, how humans came about, you know, everything. They'd been talking to me, and I was locking myself away in my room for like ages and being a bit of a recluse, just talking to them and listening to them, and my family members like, what are you doing? You know? and then one day, in 2008, they just calmly said, do you remember when White Spirit told you it was a dress rehearsal back then? And I had not heard anything since 1993. So my ears pricked up straight away, and I went, yes, can't believe it. This is what I'd waited for all those years. I thought They said, well, now it's performance time. I went, what? You know, now? Well, yes, now. I said, what today? Not today, but in this time period. I'm like, oh my goodness, what do you want me to do? You know, because I'm so, and they would constantly be saying, relax, calm down, you know, because I'd get a little bit, I'm not really like that anymore, but I did used to get quite excited and a bit ungrounded, and sometimes I still can, but not as much, because I'm used to learning all this stuff by now. But so yeah, I'm like, what do you want me to do? And they explained about the Great Gathering and how there were many others all going through the same thing as me, and their guides, their team, were all telling them in various ways to connect. So, oh great, well, where are these people? Still thinking, so literally thinking, well, they must be down the road, you know, perhaps in the nearest town there's some kind of gathering with maybe 100 people. And then they pointed to the internet. So I'm, you know, as I said, I was still naive back in 2008, and I'm like, oh, of course, the internet. So that's when I got online and started hunting around to find groups, looking for things, Googling, couldn't really find anything. I thought I was looking for a group. I was looking for an already established group somewhere. And I
can understand that. Yeah.
And I just sort of, in a way, I kind of gave up, because I found a couple, and I did speak to some people on forums, and I did find that there was a lot of conversations and a lot of misunderstandings going around in the spiritual community. And I remember joining in some of the conversations and saying what I knew, and then everyone was like sort of pouncing on me, wanting to know what I knew, and I'm like, how come they don't know this as well? You know, I didn't know that I had information that was interesting, you know, and that was truthful and that people wanted to hear. And I kind of gave up looking for this group, and I thought, well, and then I found YouTube, and I saw a guy on there, it was Ricer5, who's I'm friends with now, who had these
I've seen those interviews with you guys, and some good stuff. I've enjoyed it.
Yeah, and he had these amazing videos with all these colors and swirls and everything. So I remember saying to my partner, who really wanted to do something creative, because he's very arty, and so I said, see this video, would you be able to do something like that if I, you know, bring through channeling? And that was an interesting thing, because although my partner, and I've been with him, what, I don't know, 10 years, 8 years, something like that, he knew how I was, and he, you know, we're both spiritually aware people, but I hadn't really channeled, as in actual channeled, you know, with him, around him. It still was something I kept so private. So it would be something new for me to actually start doing what I did. And yeah. I said, if I bring through the channeling, would you be able to make a video? He said yes. And that's how it kind of started to make videos. He did all the visuals. And once I got the first comment from someone wanting to know more and asking questions, because the way I felt was I wanted to just I wanted to work for the light. I just wanted to do my mission. I just wanted to help. And I just thought, if there's just one person, because you were saying about your YouTube channel, and, you know, and if there's just one person that you're helping, just one, then it's worth it. You know, you're saying about sometimes getting negative comments. Well, you've got 2,000 subscribers. If you get 1,900 whatever bad comments, but one good one, isn't it worth it to help that one person? That's how I saw it, you know. And so yeah, I was still. And I
always still say to myself, and I tell my, you know, the folks that my viewers, you know, I still can, you know, just delete the comment. You know, you still have control, admin of your channel. So if it's something negative, you have control over removing it out of your space, and it doesn't even have to go really beyond that, you know, unless it's a reason for it to be instructive. But yeah, exactly. So it's like, it's always about the people that you are connecting with and are helping along the way. I'm totally in agreement with that. Yeah.
I had no clue, though. I mean, when I started my YouTube channel, it was all just love and light, and, you know, I'm going to bring my messages through and deliver them to people, and I love them all. And so when I got my first negative comment, it really, really upset me. I couldn't believe it.
It is a bit devastating at first. You're like, how could...
And I've never forgotten it either. I've never forgotten my first negative comment after probably about 3 or 4 videos. you know, I hadn't, and it was drug-addled hippie. You're a drug-addled hippie. It's not that bad, really, is it? Really? I mean,
But
it's
it
not
is
that
kind of
bad.
like when you don't want to be there.
And I was so upset the whole evening. I couldn't believe that someone, I'm thinking, I'm doing this in pure service with a completely open heart, and somebody's being mean to me. I couldn't believe it. And I sat there the whole evening, and the 9 were just nowhere in sight. They'd just completely gone. And then finally they came, because they leave me when I have to learn. So they leave me to
They leave
feel the emotion and work it all out. And then they came to me and they said, you do not have to do this work. You do not have to do this. It's your choice. You can stop any time. And they said, we can find a different channel. I'm like, no,
we can go somewhere else.
Come back. I don't want you to leave. And I remember saying, they said to me, but they said to me about the negative comment that they will come and that there will be more and more. And that's part of this. And yet,
and you know, it's funny. I'm sorry. It's funny because I did the same thing when I got one of my first negative comments, and it was really not a kind one at all. And it had nothing to do with my work or, oh, I'm getting some feedback. It had nothing to do with my work or what I was talking about. It was just pure mean. I thought about it, and, you know, I also asked, you know, my higher self, my guide, my, you know, and one of the things that came back that really helped me, Magenta, is that I heard, this is the only way they know how to ask a question about something that is frightening for them.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know that now.
And that's what what I had to go through too. And once I went through, it was like, okay, I got it now. But that was my moment as well. Like, oh.
Yeah, because it's a paradigm shifting, you know, presentation. And I understand that now, but at the time I was subjective in my own, you know, and I didn't understand. And what they said to me was that this would occur, and I needed to find a way to deal with this because it would happen. And I can't deal with this with anger or fear. It had to be, I had to find a way to accept this. But they said, we assure you that for every negative, and they would show me this negative amount, that the positive will always be more.
Absolutely.
The positive will always outweigh the negative. And that's exactly how it's always been.
Exactly how it's been. Exactly. And I also feel in a lot of ways that I just don't get as much as a lot of people even talk about. And I think it goes back to just the frequency that I just hold around my show and around my viewers and the people who really are trying to grow and learn and discover, as I am myself growing and learning, discovering, and meeting people like yourself, because I'm just as much in search as my viewers are, you know? So it's a reciprocal process. We're all doing that.
We're learning together. Just because you're a channel or you're an intuitive, that doesn't mean that you've got the monopoly on some kind of information that they don't have. You can access that information, but actually learning what that information means, when a lot of the information it's the language of light, it's an energetic language, it comes through in picture and emotional form, so it's coming through in metaphor. And I can honestly say that sometimes my subscribers, the positive ones, you know, that are there learning, they have been able to decode the metaphoric language the 9 use more than I have. I've presented a video, and I remember a few times I've said to the 9, I don't know about this because I didn't understand any of it. I don't know if I should even upload this. But by the time I was uploading videos, and this is the thing, you work with your spiritual guides to the point where trust is not an issue. You know, people will say to me many a time, how do you know that they're positive? How do you know you're not being hoodwinked? Well, I went through all those questions 20 years ago, and I've tested the 9 again and again and again in real life. I've ignored them. I've done the opposite of what they've told me to do. And I've learned for myself what's right and what's not, and you know how it works. I don't need the testing anymore. And I still do sometimes. But
sure, we're human. We're in this embodiment, so.
But I don't really need to anymore because it's been, you know, it's been such a long time. And so that's how it works, really. And so
I want to ask you, because you were just talking about this, the language of light. So when you finish, you know, your thought there, because I'm enjoying the story, so I know my viewers are. That's a word that's used a lot. I know myself about 30-something years ago in my own artwork, I started a writing that was just, I called it soul language. I would call it emotional language. I felt it was goddess language. It was coming up out of intuitively. And what's interesting is that I do it very quickly, but as I'm doing it, it's being downloaded into my mind exactly what it's being said. But that hasn't been in dictation or anything, such that when the artwork goes up, it's just pure energy on it. And so for me, this is what I was always told was my light language, right? And then more and more light languages come up, and people have symbols, and people say things, and people, all of this. And so I've come to this understanding that, of course, there's not one definition for light language, but I do believe there's a universal overall, and you've used it a lot. So I'm interested in you sharing with us how you would define light language in all of its aspects.
Well, that's a great question, and you've answered it yourself already, but I will add to that by saying that, yes, it's true. If you look around at all the different intuitives and channels and spiritual people, they will present the language of light or light language, and each one may be completely different to the other. So you can walk around thinking, well, what is the language of light? When they're all different. Some are symbols, some's artwork, some's this, some's that. So what the 9 have said is the language of light is one thing. It's all the same. It's one thing. And that is a frequency, an energy that is known throughout the cosmos, throughout the universe. It is like a sound. It's also light. It is a language of energy that is used for communication. And it is one wave of energy, if you like. However, it is interpreted individually and differently and subjectively through each conduit. It will depend on the conduit, on the channel, how they deliver and how they translate the frequency. So my translation as Magenta of the frequency, when the frequency, the language of light, is presented to me, I translate it through words and the way that I hear. So I perceive that I am hearing the 9 communicating with me, talking to me, dictating to me. I can hear them speak. I can see the images they are showing me, and I can feel the emotions they are giving me. But that's still a subjective and linear perception. What's actually happening is my brain, my DNA, my own innate intelligence on a physical level, on a linear level, so the 3rd dimensional aspect of me, and the other dimensional aspects that are me, that's the DNA that's out of time, the quantum DNA, the DNA of the soul, the source aspect, all that's working together through me. It's the same thing as the 9 talking to me. It's exactly the same thing. So that's how I interpret the language of light. Now, there are individuals who have interpreted this energy in a very ancient language, symbolic form. I've never seen this, but the 9 have told me that there are in certain places like, maybe stone structures, caves, ancient places like that. There are certain hieroglyphs that are a translation of the language of light through that person for that time period. There is like a universal language. It may be maybe Sumerian or something like that, or maybe Aramaic or something. They tell me that language, there's the same language throughout the cosmos. And if you look at our galaxy as just one part of the cosmos, the language is the same, but it's translated through the creative translation, so through writing, through art, through music, all the different ways on this planet, but there will be a similarity. So what they're saying to me is some of our language will be similar to the language throughout the galaxy in other planetary systems within extraterrestrial societies. And some of the pictures and the art and the architecture is the same. And Egypt, I'm told, is a place where there are many cosmic, universally used symbology that is not just in Egypt on Earth. It's actually there are artifacts there and presentations of artwork there that
Right,
are used
right.
universally.
And to your point, it's so interesting because my background is I originally did go to art school for graphic design and what have you, but then I've always been interested in archaeology and anthropology, and so I went back to school and got my degree in behavioral science, and which was a study of cultures. I never actually worked as an archaeologist, always loved it, and so a lot of my artwork has a very textural material sort of feel to it, which a lot of my language of light was coming through and or comes through in my artwork. And then recently, back in to your point, and I always studied symbols and could see the similarities in symbols across cultures that weren't connected to any real language, but were symbols that I could remember, you know, having been taught, especially when I've been on, have memories of being on more organic type of ships. Um, and so these symbols are in my mind. So anyway, just recently, I went on an archaeological expedition with the woman who runs the New Earth channel. We went to 22 cities in the hilltops of Italy, and we were digging back in these caves that are got to be millions of years old, and they're just all covered over in brush. They're not even kept like as historical references that they are, but literally in digging through these caves in these various regions, you began to see over and over again some of these same symbols that I had from my memory, but I've never been to these caves before. And you could start seeing them. And I would take pictures and I was showing her how they were popping up, and she was starting to see them too. But was also interesting, to your point, is that some of the doorways and some of the symbols above these doorways that were tucked away in these like Cervano and these hilltop regions of Italy were identical to stuff that you can find in Egypt. Mm-hmm. And so it's like these cultures, these civilizations were just purposely being allowed to be overgrown, etc., to mask this information. But these same cave networks are in Malta, they're in Turkey, they're everywhere. And you just see these things being repeated. So yes, and I think that a lot of this is beginning to surface again. But to your point, I've experienced and witnessed this myself.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. The Nine Call 2017, the year of the great reveal. I'm sure that's going to continue on beyond 2017, but 2017 is an uncovering of that which has been covered up, that which has been hidden. And it's, you know, slap bang in the middle of this now. The next 2 months, July and August, lots more is coming out. More and more people are learning about these things. They're uncovering truth. They're realizing that they've been, you know, lied to, if you like, or they've been fed false reality their whole life, and they're finding out the truth in so many different ways. And the more people that learn the truth, then that adds to this collective, you know, mind of humanity, which is starting to look like awareness rather than ignorance. You know, humanity's mind has been predominantly in ignorance. There's been a cover over it. And now that cover's being lifted. The Nine call this the veils. One of my recent videos is the dissolution of the veils. And, you know, these veils are lifting. And, you know, people are discovering the truth in all areas.
I recommend that for my viewers to go to your channel, your YouTube channel. I've gone through so many of your videos. It's Magenta Pixie. So you guys should definitely go over there and subscribe. And you do put up regular videos. So it's definitely a way to stay in contact with Magenta as she releases stuff weekly. I wanted to, because we're in such a good flow here, so I want to just throw out to you 3 topics that I'd like for you to share. And then you do it in your wonderful style of just speaking through it. I want to get just for us to talk about the crystalline matrix and the idea of how our bodies, I do believe that we're going from carbon to crystalline. I think that now those of us who have gone through the crystalline, we're moving into our light bodies, because I'm starting to see other kind of shifts that are different than the crystalline shifts that I've been experiencing. But anyhow, so I want you to talk about that, along with, you just spoke about the 0 point and the nodal points. I'm very much interested in how, to me, there's some sort of, I picked those three because in my own experience, and from reading what you're saying about it, I've sort of experienced a connection of these three. But I'm interested to hear how you're, how you would share that with us.
Okay, so the crystalline matrix, how the nine have explained this to me is, there was a time when humanity on this planet, or the beings on this planet, had a different DNA formation than we have now. It's difficult to put it into words because it's quite multidimensional. But the best way that the nine have explained it is to say that the DNA structure, for example, had, say, we have a double helix, a double helix with two strands of DNA. So we're looking at sort of about 10 or 12 strands of DNA. But the DNA is it's not the same as the double stranded DNA, the two strands.
The double helix.
Yeah, the double helix is like a genetic information, and it can be seen and examined and decoded by technology on this planet. Beyond that double helix, we're looking at what scientists call junk DNA. So they see sort of about 5-10% of the DNA, and the rest they call junk DNA. Same with the brain, that we only use 5 or 10% of the brain, and the rest is we can't use it. And this is, again, a bit of brainwashing, because we're thinking, we've only got a double helix and we can't use more than 5 or 10%. So it's a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Exactly.
When you do something, you actually create that reality for you, for yourself. So the minute you start to let that go and think, no, I can have a higher dimensional strand formation in my DNA. I can use all of my DNA and I can use all of my brain. Once you realize that, then that will start to happen. So there was a time when humanity had 10 or 12 strands of DNA. This is etheric stranding, not visible in modern day technology that we know of. At this point. And within this, to cut a long story very short, on one level, there was infiltration that came in from other civilizations, other planetary civilizations, extraterrestrials. That infiltration took away the 10 strands, if you like, leaving us with 2 strands of DNA. That's one explanation. It's quite a linear explanation. Another explanation is more of a multidimensional one, which is that the souls and the consciousness incarnating into the physical beings on the 3rd dimension were wanting to experience the most separateness that they could in order to present to the source experience that which is furthest away from source. In order to come back to source, one goes as far away from source as one can. So one will forget, one will move away from the light formations, the crystalline matrix, and go down into this separateness, this ultimate matter, and the forgetting that one is spirit. It's a separation between matter and spirit. So you become just matter, and you had to lose that memory. So on the one hand, it was a choice that these souls made from a 5th, 6th, 7th dimensional viewpoint. That's true. But from a 3rd and 4th dimensional viewpoint, it was taken from us. Literally, we were infiltrated and it was taken from us so that we couldn't remember. So both of these are true, because you'll hear both stories in the spiritual community, and it's both,
Right. Okay. I love that.
So we went from this crystalline structure. The reason why it's crystalline, and I'm not one for physics at all, so it's difficult for me to explain it scientifically. I have to use metaphor. But the crystalline structure is a DNA structure that looks like a lattice of light. It is it takes the strands within the DNA into a quantum field, meaning that the memory of the person who has this activated crystalline DNA structure, they will hold the memories of this quantum field. They will have the memories of their past lives. They will have the knowings of the future lives. They will have the knowings of the parallel realities and alternate realities, all held within the one physical structure. That's normal, and much of the human blueprint throughout the cosmos, that's the standard blueprint. But in order to experience separation, one has to forget. So that's what the crystalline structure is, and it's a crystal structure within the DNA. It's actually a physical crystal structure, but when I say crystal, it's to do with the way the molecules are formed. So if you look at biology, if you understand biology and you look at a crystalline structure, it's got a different formation of molecules. Like, it's the best I can do, because I'm just not, I'm not knowledgeable enough with physics, so I'm just telling you what the 9 are saying to me. But they're basically saying that, you know, instead of, for example, instead of it being A, B, and C, we're looking at A, B, B, C, 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 D, D, D. It's more of a complex structure, and it's crystalline because the pattern in the molecule has a crystalline pattern, like a crystal. So if you were to look at the molecules of an actual crystal and the molecules of this DNA structure, there would be a similarity. The reason why there's a similarity, the 9 would say, is because crystal holds memory. So if you look at rock, it holds memory of the energy around it. If you look at crystals, and anyone who's a healer who works with crystals will know that the crystals can be programmed by your emotions, and that crystal will hold some knowledge, it will hold memory, and it will hold energy that you can use for healing. The crystal skulls, anyone who's studied the crystal skulls or worked with the crystal skulls, they're like mini computers. They store memory, they store information. So the crystalline DNA structure, holds memory and information in it in the same way that crystals do, in the same way that the crystal skulls do. And that's what human beings had. And these human beings were different to the human beings now. They could do things that we can't, well, some of us can do, but, you know, the majority of us can't do. And so what's known as the fall of man, the fall was the time when evolution, a quick, rapid evolution, took us into the loss of the crystalline structure, into the carbon-based double helix. Now, that doesn't mean that the memories aren't there, but they're lying dormant, they're offline. And all you have is the double helix, which is the linear experience. That's the carbon-based. Now, throughout history, there have been many individuals in secret societies and individuals taking paths within Kundalini raising and enlightenment that have known of this, and they have taken individual paths into recreating the crystalline structure. So there have been individuals throughout history that have managed to reconstruct the crystalline structure and have been able to move into what we call ascension and get those memories back. They've always been individuals. So these are the, you know, well, some of them we've never even heard of. They kept themselves quiet into themselves alone.
Like the rainbow body that some of the Tibetan monks have done, things like that.
Exactly. The rainbow body of light is exactly what I'm talking about. So there've been individuals that have done this, but they've been in small groups, small secret societies, or individuals. What's happening now is a collective Kundalini raising, a collective rainbow body of light awareness. We are all moving back into the crystalline structure. Does that mean that every single person on the planet is going to do this? No, doesn't look that way right now. Ideally, it'd be great if everybody did. However, there is like a sort of feedback from an activated individual who is activating the light body, the rainbow body of light, the crystalline structure. There's a resonance. It's like an electrical or electromagnetic field that bounces off one person and moves into another person. It's known as, I think, sympathetic resonance in physics, like in music, where you can get a tuning fork and you can hit the tuning fork, and if you've got a guitar in the room, the guitar will play the chord. It's the same thing that happens with the humans that are activated with the crystalline structure. They will pass that energy. So even those that are not activating their own crystalline structure, they're still being bombarded with the signals coming in from the galactic core, coming in from the earth, coming in from many different places, so that everyone's being given the chance, because everyone's being washed with this wave of crystalline light, if you like. Some individuals are so standing in a state of blocks and traumas and stagnation that each time they're washed with this energy, it isn't actually activating the core of them, and the DNA structure is remaining offline. However, there are others that are being washed with this light, and it is triggering a movement. The minute a movement takes place, then they will start to unravel. So, you know, everyone's part of this.
I've noticed that even with the people that I've come in contact with over even more recent years, especially in the last couple of years, you know, that I'll start, I don't know why I'm getting this feedback, but it'll stop, I guess. I'll sort of tell people, if you want to hang around me for a period of time, expect the things to start happening, because especially if I find people who ask. Normally, if a person asks you something like, you know, such and such happened to me, or I was reading something and I'm just curious, do you happen to know about it? I'll tell them before I answer it. In answering this, it's going to start a process that, you know, and just make sure you really, you know, you're ready. I mean, not that you're ready, but that you want it, because it's great, but it'll be some ups and downs. And you just want to know that you're actually stepping, you know, you want to know that you're stepping off a diving board, if in fact that's what you're stepping off of. It's just good to know this. But I have noticed to the point that I felt it's only kind enough to say, are you ready?
I've done the same, you know, depending on their question. It's like, well, and sometimes you can answer a question on a third dimensional level.
Exactly.
So, yeah, and not go into the multidimensional. It helps to actually look at the energy of the person and actually see how much they're able to assimilate, and how much will shock them or frighten them, or how much will gently awaken them. The last thing you want to do is do the fear thing. So you have to look at the person.
And that's a good point, because that's one of the things I even share with folks on, you know, viewers and people that I come in contact with, because to your point of being in training and not realizing it, in 1991 or 2, it was during those time periods, but it finished in 92 that I became a Reiki master. But I didn't become a Reiki master because I really wanted to be a healer. And I kept on saying, why am I doing this again? I mean, I really don't want to open up a healing practice and be a Reiki master. But I was fascinated with the energy. And when I started working with it, it immediately became familiar with me, because I recognized it as the same energy that was coming to me through my art and through other activities. But through that process, it helped me to recognize people's energy patterns. And like you were saying, when you said something earlier that really resonated with me, because then what started happening is, you know, I started understanding that you ask people for permission. Like, you know, people think, well, if you can sort of intuit what's going on in their lives, that you always can, like you just walk around and just every chap in the room. Well, no, you ask for permission. It's like when they acknowledge, yes, I don't mind you helping me with a pain or something, then it's interesting how there's a flood of information that will come in that will tell you exactly how they got it, what was going on with it, why they're holding on to it, what the energy patterns are behind it. And so it's that process, but it's definitely symbiotic and it's mutual. You know, you're back and forth. And once a person gives you permission, this is when it opens. That's why I always will say when I go to answer a question, well, you know, it's like a way of getting permission, so that, because I know that not only things will open, but in the process of me answering the questions, things will start coming to me about them, which will help me better know where they are in the process and how much, like you said, you share or not share and all that. So Yeah,
Absolutely. You can go into a room and you're not walking in like, ooh, and tuning in on everyone. You know, you're
exactly.
respectful. It's like, you know, you're respectful of those etiquette and boundaries in a spiritual sense. And so you don't go around looking to tune in on people unless they ask, or unless they've given you permission, unless they are broadcasting a very loud signal. If
Exactly.
somebody is very violent and angry, you will be able to see it immediately. That's because that would affect your reality. You know, because if you
Precisely.
walk into a room and you see someone who's incredibly violent, then you can be careful about how you act with that person, because you're aware that certain triggers can make that person angry. So you're going to see that. Anything that would help
Precisely.
you. If somebody is incredibly in a state of grief, you'll feel that because it's a loud broadcast. Then you may be able to go up and sort of say, are you okay? You know, you look a bit sad, when you can actually see what. So loud broadcasts and things like service to self, individuals who might be doing things that are really not good. You can
No, I
see
know what
that
you
as
mean.
well.
Yeah, you can. You can. You definitely can see that. You're
And
right.
everyone, it's like, you know, when you walk around it every day, you're wearing jewelry and you're wearing clothes. You don't need to give permission. You may look at the clothes I'm wearing and you may look at my jewelry.
Precisely.
So that first layer of the matrix, the aura, you will always see that first layer. That's like someone's clothes. They're showing you the first little bit. If you're, you know, a clairvoyant, or you're intuitive or empathic or psychic or whatever, you'll see that first. You'll be able to look at someone, she's nice. Look at that person, she's not. You know, you'll be able to,
Exactly.
you know what I mean? You can see that first layer. It's only
It's like
when
that
someone
old
asks.
adage, first impressions, like, always looking at that first impression. It's a similar kind of thing to that, right?
It's a similar thing, but it's deeper.
Deeper.
Somebody who doesn't have clairvoyant sight or empathy in that level won't
Hmm.
see. Like,
Hmm.
you know, for example, I've had people, you know, come on television and I can see that they're not a nice person at all, and I'll actually go, oh, you know, and cringe, and other people like, what? And I said, can you not see? You know, this is years ago, when I first sort of learned. I
No, I
remember
know what you mean.
one pattern that's very, very strong is when somebody's taken a substance. And I remember being at my friend's house, going back about 10 years. Her teenage son had been out with his friends and he'd obviously had some marijuana. She didn't know he was taking it. And he was only
Mm.
young, like, you know, he wasn't 18, I don't think. He was younger than that. And I remember him walking in the room, and the marijuana changes the frequency so much. It broadcasts such a different signal. And he walked in the room and I went, whoa. And of course, and everyone else, because it's so clear to me, I
Right.
presumed, and everyone's looking at me like, what? And he was like stood there, and I knew he was thinking, act sort of normal, don't. And I said, oh, nothing. No, nothing. And I'm like, oh no, I'm going to get him in trouble. And of course, afterwards, my friend said, what did you see? I said, oh, I don't want to get him in trouble. She said, please tell me. And I said, well, I think he'd had a bit of a smoke, you know. But I couldn't understand how they couldn't see it.
Right. Oh, I hear you.
It's as clear as, I mean, I still now I understand that when people are in different stages of awareness, then they're not going to see it. But when I see something
Precisely.
so clearly, it's so difficult to understand how someone can't see it, because it's
See it. Yeah.
so
I know
very
what
clear.
you mean.
Yeah. And it's the same with everybody. And when someone is an actor or a journalist or a politician and they're putting themselves out there in photographs and on television, then more than that first layer is seen, because they're not just showing their clothing to the public, if you like. They're showing themselves to a larger group of individuals by being on television and in front of a camera. So you can automatically see just a little bit more. And you don't need permission for that, because it's being shown by virtue of them being in front
Openly.
of the camera. But
Hmm.
obviously you wouldn't go looking more deeply into the matrix, unless, you know, you had been given permission, or if you are in the training ground. That's that
Right.
period of training, the 9 called the training ground. And in the training
Mhm.
ground, there are extended permissions, and those extended permissions have been worked out prior to your incarnation.
Mhm.
So when you're
Mhm.
in the training ground, you will be given permission, But I do feel that there are healers out there, and psychic readers that will. I've actually met people who say, "Oh, that person, they're not very well. I'm going to send them some healing," and I'm like, well, but they don't know them. The person stood over the other road at the end of the road. You know, oh, that person's got a bad leg. I'm going to send that person some healing. And I'm saying, well, you don't know that person. You know, oh, but their higher self told me it's okay. Now, I understand that that is one way that someone might work, but you have to be careful. Are you genuinely feeling an absolute calling to send this person healing? Has that higher self aspect genuinely merged with you? Or is it, as I suspect, in some cases, an excuse to just throw your energy out wherever? And we must learn permissions and etiquette. That is one of the things that the guides, a genuine high guide, will teach you permissions and etiquette very early on in your learning.
I agree with that. And it's funny because one of the things I do talk about on this channel, because as I shared with you at the beginning of this broadcast, do you hear feedback?
No, not my end. You're as clear as a whistle.
So mine just might be through this. I'll be okay. Is that I've always been a big believer of people growing and learning their own independently, you know, like to be self-reliant. And I do believe that you meet people along the path where there is exchanges, and those exchanges help you to grow, or they'll say something that will help open up your mind or develop. And then maybe even through some of those relationships, there is a trust that you know that you can go to that person and they're going to share on a level that is truly for your higher good and will move you along towards continued self-reliance. So much now in this movement, as you know, there's so many people out there that, oh, can take this implant out, they could do this, oh, could do this, $111 over here. And I just guard myself and ask, you know, suggest that people also be careful with this type of activity, because you have to know for yourself if in fact you do feel like you have an implant, and can you just take it out yourself, or what is this implant and what's all these concepts, and you know, and part of it's self-reliance. So sometimes even at the most, you know, the basic levels, I oftentimes will share like the basic level, like if you just sense something's not right, you may not even be able to articulate why it's not right. If someone asks you who is experienced themselves, you may not even know how to put it into words, but that doesn't disacknowledge or disavow the fact that that's what you were feeling. In some kind of way, you got to hold on to it and kind of go with it. And that's, to me, how so many people, like, that's your beginning stages. I know even with me, the areas that keep on, as things keep on opening up for me, sometimes it's just a glimpse. Sometimes it's just the aha moment, you know, sometimes it's just a feeling. But I've learned to go with those, because in there is the steady growth and opening development. Because I really am, I guess my heart is encouraging people at the very smallest and lowest or beginning, or, you know, whatever level. And I don't mean small and low and big in terms of quantitative or in terms of position, but just as a way of dialoguing about where we could be in the circle, I like to think of it. Don't to always acknowledge that aspect of yourself. And, you know, someone's looking at you right now and thinking, oh, wow, she's really so far along and she's figured this out, and I'm glad to have her to listen to, but suppose I didn't have her, what do I do? And so how would you answer that, Magenta? Because that's my heart. My heart is for people to understand, you know, and trust where they are in the process, and they'll continue to develop.
Starting with resonance, understanding what feels right for you. So it's going with our emotions, and we've been brainwashed really since children to not listen to that. You know, as children, we try to find out, this feels right to me. And then a parent or a teacher will say, stop doing that. That's very naughty. You're supposed to do this. So we grow up and we learn not to listen to our resonance, especially when we become parents. there is a strict, especially here in the UK, I'm sure it's the same in the US. There's a strict sort of parenting way of doing things in the system.
Right. Yes.
And you are supposed to follow the health visitor, or follow what the doctor or the nurse or whatever, or older parents. And there's this particular way of parenting that is very much you do it like this, and if your child is naughty, then put them in the room, or stick them on the naughty step and shut the door.
Right.
And I've seen programs where these parents are sitting there like, I feel so bad, putting her on the naughty step and hearing her cry. Every part of me is saying, go and cuddle her. Well, that's because the resonance is, go cuddle your child. The child
Exactly.
needs comfort. And yet the system is saying, no, that's being soft. So again, you're taught to ignore the maternal instinct, which is the most powerful instinct, the female maternal instinct. If you've got that right, then you've got your resonance. So it's coming back to the resonance. When I first started to feel this, then I would call it the yes feeling, because it's like inside, it's like your whole body is saying yes, yes, rather than no, no. But obviously I've been asked this question many, many times. I developed a little technique to assist people to find the resonance, and it's very, very simple. So I know you don't need to do this exercise because you already have the resonance, but we'll go through it with you.
Let's do it. Yeah, I always go through things.
Is your birth name Robyn? Were you given that as your birth name, Robyn?
Yes.
Yes. So if you say my birth name is Robyn, the reason why I do this is because there are a lot of starseeds who don't fully resonate with their birth name. So if they were to say my name is Robyn, but they believe their name is Shazanda or whatever, they're not going to have the resonance. So we must say my birth name, because it's true. The body knows the truth about everything, because the junk DNA that the scientists talk about is the Akashic records. It's the library of everything, the divine Akash. Everything that's ever happened, everything that's happening now, everything that will ever happen or could ever happen in every timeline. You have access to that. And that resonance will assist you in every walk of life, and everything that you want to discover, whether it's, should I go see this channel? Should I read this book? Is this person genuine? Is this a good president for America? You can find out all of these things through this. So if you say to me, my birth name is Robyn.
My birth name is Robyn.
So describe to me, how does that feel when you say it?
Actually, surprisingly enough, I got just a little jump that happened kind of right here in this part of in this solar plex. So my birth name is Robyn. Yeah, it just sort of, it feels, truthfully, it feels like that is my birth name, but it doesn't feel like that is my name, like
exactly
who I am in this right there.
Pretty much every starseed says the same thing, which is why I changed the exercise from my birth name is Robyn, because people were saying to me, no, it doesn't feel right. And I'm thinking, how am I going to use this? So it's what I'm getting at here is to make a statement that we know is true. We know your birth name is Robyn in this reality. I'm going to take it further. My birth name in this reality, in this dimension, is Robyn. And you have to go this precise with a starseed, because they do know everything. They don't know that they know everything, but they do, because that junk DNA, that crystalline structure, is coming online, and we are moving back to that formation. That's where we are right now. We're in a state of growth. We're moving beyond that double helix, and we're in a morphing, transmuting state between the carbon to the crystalline. So now say to me, my name is Janet. My birth name is Janet.
My birth name is Janet.
How does that feel?
Like nothing, no resonance, just nothing happened, flatlined.
Okay, so I know that sounds like a very simple exercise, but it's a good way to start. And it's learning, what does it feel like in your energy system, in your chakra system, and in your heart? What does it feel like when you speak the truth?
Right. So this is almost like a divining rod. Like when you use a divining rod, you learn what yes and no is. And once you learn the yes and no position, you always sort of know which way. I work with Maria Wheatley. She's training me in that. And it's so funny how every time it's like that. So this is a similar type of thing that you do.
it's like kinesiology
Wow.
with
Yeah.
the energy system. You know,
Wow.
so you can start
Yeah.
saying, I'm a Pleiadian soul, I'm a starseed, this is my mission, I'm supposed to be writing, I'm supposed to be channeling, I'm a natural artist, I have the artist's eye, I'm raising my rainbow body of light, whatever it is. And it's not, you can externalize that to art, to talk about other people. It's feeling the resonance. What does it feel like to you? And it will be unique. You might feel a tingle, literally, or you might just feel a balance, or you might see a shape. You might see geometry when you say, my birth name is Robyn. You might see a balanced geometry around you, or you might see a white light. And then when you say, my birth name is Janet, there's no geometry, or there's a wonky
Nothing happened.
geometry, or you know, the white light is splodged with brown. Whatever it is, there's no wrong or right. Your visual and your feeling is unique to you. It's your subjective energy system. It will be unique. We are all unique. So whilst we have similarities with one another in our ascension process, we will be unique in that. So that's,
I love that. So that's a great one for viewers to do. That's a wonderful and very holistic way of beginning to do that separating within the body resonance. I love that. That's a good one. Thanks.
the key is practice.
Yes.
Practice every day. And trust. We're learning to trust the resonance. So practice, 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 and you will become, it'll be second nature.
One of the things thank you for that. One of the things that I wanted to ask you, because along the way in this channel, I started exploring the Mandela effect, because I'm very fascinated by it. I have decided that to not title it that anymore, because originally in the beginning, about a year or so ago, when I was doing it, was so fresh, and so many, I noticed like-minded energies came together. It was truly noticing all these differences and remembering. And then of course it's gotten hijacked by those energies that want to cause the confusion and hijack it, and the egos and all of that. And but it was a wonderful way for, I think, starseeds and like-minded people to find one another. But I've chosen to move away from it as a name. The energy, I think, has been the effects of Mandela I've been experiencing since a little kid. I can remember stuff as a kid happening, things like, I lost a ring in a swimming pool in Maryland, and 2 years later, I find it in my deceased grandmother's button box in Pennsylvania. How did this little gold ring get from there to there? I mean, I was 10 years old. So, I can think of these types of things that's been happening. So I always would say to my viewers, it's a speeding up of things that have already been going on. It's a speeding up in a way for us to start seeing even more so how to lock in our growth. So I would so I wanted to bring it up because there'll be a lot of viewers looking at it. They'll probably think, well, I wonder what Magenta thinks about the Mandela effect, or how would she describe it, or what the council has shown her, this is comparatively. So I would love for you to speak on that, if you would.
Well, the Mandela effect is only a name for a phenomenon that was given by a group of people. It's a name for a natural phenomenon that's occurred since the beginning of time. I do have a video on my channel, completely channeled from the 9, all about the Mandela effect, so you can find that. So there's 2 streams coming in here. One is a natural organic phenomenon, a natural organic structure. It's the way it is. We jump timelines. We jump timelines all the time. And that relates to the matrix. It's the same thing as becoming a master of the matrix. That's jumping timelines, creating your own reality, literally from one of your questions earlier was about the 0 point. So bringing that in, getting into the 0 point, and creating your reality, you can influence that, Mandela effect, if you like, to work for you. If you are unaware of your own matrix and you're unaware of jumping timelines, it's still going to happen to you, because that's how we grow. We don't stay in one timeline all the time. We jump around into different alternate aspects of self. We live in a quantum universe. So to someone who's experiencing separation and linear time, but has just jump timelines and holds the memory of the previous timeline, they are going to be shocked and think, oh my goodness, what's happened, you know.
Exactly.
This is one stream. It's a natural stream, and obviously it's all part of when we learn spiritually. When we have the crystalline structure, we'll have memory of this. We'll incarnate and know that these things happen. And if we need to relearn, then the parents and the teachers within our society will be teaching the children of these things. We'll grow up knowing these things. We won't be scared of them, or they won't be a shock to us, because we'll understand how, you know, the natural reality works. But there is another stream coming in. Won't really affect starseeds who are working with that resonance, who are working with the matrix, but this is more of an infiltration. So there is a technology available that can create a collective Mandela type effect. I'm not sure I'm not sure of the physics and how they do that, but there is technology way beyond our possible imagination that is on this planet.
Just very quickly to my viewers, I just showed them this 2 videos ago when I showed an effect, and I talked around it, and the very smart ones were able to go into the technology and get a bit ahead of it before it caught up, and they literally saw this exact thing that you're talking about, because I was seeing that same thing. So please continue.
Well, as I said, it's a control technique. And it, you know, that there is technology that can change time and that can actually you know, create wormholes in particular natural cosmic structures that, and these man-made technologies can actually open these structures up that would have occurred naturally. That is like a false speeding up of time. It's like these 2 threads that are occurring within humanity's evolution, and one is a transhumanism type pathway and one is an organic pathway. So for example, we could take telepathy. On the one hand, there is the telepathic pathway of using technology to be telepathic with other humans, and then there is an organic pathway where we naturally become empathic and telepathic with other humans. And there is a sort of I won't say a battle, because looking at battle mentality is not a good way to go forward, but there certainly is a sort of a bit of a competition going on within these 2 threads. And one is an agenda of a certain group of individuals, planetary and beyond planetary, and the other is a natural evolution, a natural organic evolution, which is the starseed timeline. And for aware starseeds, it's the organic timeline that they will be experiencing. So when you become sovereign, when you learn to work with the matrix and operate from the 0 point, you become immune to these technologies. So whilst other individuals on the planet may be subject to the false technology that creates this false Mandela effect, starseeds will not. And if they are pushed into another timeline against their will, which is unlikely once they're sovereign, they'll hold the memories of what's happened and they'll be able to move back. When you're sovereign, you're in control of your personal destiny. And whilst the world around you may be experiencing a chaotic reality, you don't have to be part of that when you become sovereign within your matrix. You stand within a bubble, a sacred bubble. And you've probably heard the spiritual saying of the world, but not in it. And that's what it means. So you do actually create a different timeline for yourself. The starseeds, as a community, are creating their own reality and their own timeline. They will go to, if you like, a different earth, a different, all metaphors for the reality that they're creating for themselves. They will go to a different earth, be on a different planet, than other individuals who are manifesting something else. So it's very important to find that resonance so that you can then practice with it, learn what resonates with you, and then you can learn which timeline resonates with you. But you asked about the 0 point. The 0 point, I'm not sure in what way the 0 point it can be explained in a scientific or physics sense, in a spiritual sense, and the 9 tell me it is the same thing. The 0 point in physics, in science, is the same thing as the 0 point in spirituality. The difference is that in physics, it's explained as a mathematical formula, and in spirituality, it's described as a state of consciousness or as a place. But it is the same thing. And the 0 point is the place of creation. You know, some people might call the oneness many names. The void is one. You know, the primordial soup, the original page.
The Hindus call it Bindi or Bindu, you know, that point.
That point, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
The 0 point is bringing that into yourself and accessing it. It is the ultimate memory. So when you fire up the DNA and move into memory, you remember when you were source. It becomes a memory, so it's linear. It's before I was human, I was source. I was all and everything. I was pure consciousness. I was the void, or I was in the void, however you want to see it. That is not the 0 point, because it's still linear, but that's the way to find the 0 point. It's like, I'm here incarnated, and I used to be source before I was born. I was the ultimate prime creator, source, God, whatever you want to call it. Then you bring it into, you change it from a linear memory into knowing. And then you move into the I am. I am source. I am the void. I am prime creator. I am God. You bring it to that place. But you allow, like with the resonance of using your birth name, you say this and you resonate with what you are saying. I am the void. I am God. I am source of all things. And you get that yes feeling. You get that resonance. That energy will resonate with you when you make these statements more than anything. You're not going to get a resonance that's saying, no, you're not. You, if you do, it's okay if you do that. That's not the 0 point. That's you working with the ego self, which is fine. Don't reject the ego. It's there to help you. It's there to teach you. But if you get into that 0 point, you say, I am source, or simply I am, which is a very strong statement, and you resonate and the heart opens, you are in the 0 point. It is the now moment. It's the moment of now. There's no past. There's no future. It's not a case of I used to be source, or I will be source one day, or I'm source in another reality. It's like now, here, in this moment. And you bring that feeling. It's the energy. And what's actually happening to you when you do this is the DNA is changing its structure. So when you move from carbon-based to crystalline-based, that is not a linear journey. We see it in a linear sense. It's like we're two-stranded carbon-based, and then in the year 2019 we'll be at 4 strands, and then by 2021 we'll be at 8 strands. It's not like that at all. It's the same with the brain. It's like I only use 5 or 10%, but maybe next week I'll use 11%, and next year I'll have used 20%, and then by the time I'm 90, I'll be using 80%. It's not like that. It's not linear. So how it works with the brain, it's like 10%, and there's a shoot forward 80% in the second and pulling straight back to 10%. That's what happens. It's like a flare. It's like a big peak like this. But in that peak, you've accessed 80% of your memory. You shoot back, and then the memory is there, and then you unravel it in linear time. So you stay in the 20% while you unravel the 80% experience you had for 1 second. And it's exactly the same with the DNA and the crystalline structure. So in the 0 point, you access the now moment. Now, in that point, you are the DNA. What's actually happening is, instead of it, it moves in a certain flow. And again, I'm not a cellular biologist, so it's really, really hard to explain. So how I can explain it metaphorically is it's like it is like a toroidal field, and it's moving in a certain wave formation, assuming that you are activated and you are healthy and you already have an expansive way of thinking. It should be moving. And then when you get into that 0 point, there's like a quantum aspect to that toroidal field opens up in a new shape, and it sort of flares out like this, like wings actually, around the toroidal field, because you start to fly. And what you're doing here is accessing beyond memory, because it's not memory anymore, it's now, because memory is linear, but we do it through memory, if that makes sense. So the 0 point is the moment that is now. No past, no present, no future. There's no past life contracts. There are no arrangements that you've made prior to your blueprint. The blueprint doesn't exist. Everything is simply I am. That's where you are. And that is the feeling you need to get into when you want to change the matrix, jump timelines. That's the Mandela effect. When you want to control the Mandela effect in your reality, you get into that 0 point field in order to do it. That's where you manifest from. That's where you create your wishes and your dreams, and that's where you send your healing, and etc., etc. That's where you communicate with the divine. That's where you channel. You move into the 0 point flow. If you're in a state of linear time, then it's going to be very difficult for you to translate the language of light, because the language of light is a frequency outside of linear time. So you need to be in the 0 point in order to bring down a pure energy. You translate it into a sense that makes sense to the third dimensional brain in linear time, because the third dimensional brain is the interface that translates that energy. So you bring the words into sense, but you need to be in a 0 point feeling. So the 0 point, I guess, in a spiritual sense, could also be likened to, I spoke earlier about QHHT. That's the 0 point. Dolores Cannon found the 0 point with her clients. Anyone who is using deep meditation, transcendental meditation, anyone who's going into an altered state when they do yoga, anyone who's feeling they're in an altered state when they're being creative, or when they are following martial arts, or, you know, anything like that, that's the 0 point. You don't have to be sitting there with your eyes closed. It's a state of feeling. You can be sitting by a river, you can be writing, you can be, I mean, you will be. And as an artist, if you're an artist, that's where you will be. When you're drawing down language of light interpretations into art, you'll be in the 0 point. And what you learn to do is access the 0 point and still integrate linear time within that, so that you can be in the 0 point in that moment, and you're utterly feeling you are source. You take the overview of entire reality, not just the overview of Earth or the overview of the galaxy, but the overview of all things. And then your child runs in to the room, your 3-year-old child, mummy, I'm hungry, I want my tea. You instantly switch. Okay, yeah, let's get the oven on. You switch.
Absolutely,
You
yeah.
learn to be in both those places.
It's funny because that's because I've always done my art and been in that creative space, and I never stopped it. Even after I got out of college and I did my first job, I was on that job maybe a year, maybe not even a year. It was a really good job. I was in the government. It was good money. And it just, one day I woke up and thought, this is not my life. And I've always, from that point, manifested my life out of what I knew and how it should be moving, and not in a job format. So, but as an artist, it's absolutely, I mean, you know, when you get to that real point of creativity, and I know it's the same with musicians, writers, I mean, because I've worked with a lot of these. I've taught in the Smithsonian system and resident associates programs, and I've worked with a lot of creatives. And it is that place that you get when you know you're in pure creation. It is, you lose sense of everything. And it's that it is absolutely, like you've described, a resonance. And as I continue to sort of deal in the other aspects of life and moving through it, oftentimes when I want to create or manifest, even, you know, like things are happening in life, like they say, you know, stuff happens, and your water boiler breaks down, you know, and it's $3,000. You're like, yikes. You know, I would stop and just go into that place, and I would manifest, you know, and something would happen and it would be taken care of. And I learned early in life that that's just how I manifested from from that 0 point, or as you're calling it. I didn't call it a 0 point, but I called it that source of where I knew I created from. And so to that point, what you were saying, it reminded me of the work of Walter Russell. He talks about, I think similarly, in his one of his mathematical computations, he describes it as 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 0, 4, 3, 2, 1. And he says that's the existence of everything. So it's like the out breath in the in breath. So when you talked about like that, you're 20% and you zoom out to 80% and you zoom back, it popped into my mind that numeric line that actually is a circle, and it actually is that brings you back. It brings you out and brings you back. So so I wanted to throw that out there because it reminded me of that. And then was something else that you said that in my own experience, I've definitely related to that, but it escapes me now. But so thank you so much for that, Mandela, because that's exactly very similar to where, you know, I've come and I've shown in this channel that, because I want people not to get caught up in. And as so many of my viewers started saying, yes, 20 years ago, I remember such and such. And I would say, yeah, so it's not this little new phenomenon. You got to be careful because there's an energy on that can sweep you back out to sea like a wave. You know, we're standing on the shore right now. let's sort of dig in.
Exactly. On an organic sense, it's not new. It's the way of creation. The technology may be
absolutely
used on individuals, but every technology that's being used by these groups, it's all backfiring. Everything that they're trying to do, they're trying so hard to get control back, which they've lost. They've lost that control.
Absolutely.
It hasn't gone the way they wanted it to go. Every time they try to gain control, all they are doing is unifying and waking up the people more and more. Everything's backfiring, and that's because the energetics the energy no longer sustains.
So let me ask you something about this then, with the node point. So now one of the things that I've noticed, and this is what I've noticed in my own experiences, but in reading your book, you know, this is what came into my mind. And so I'm asking you, because I was thinking about the 0 point and that point of creation. And then I noticed that as I become more and more aware of my body, as it's changing, the physical structure of it, as I call it jumping with the light, but as I'm back and forth between these dimensions, one of the things I began to notice, and it comes from that 0 point. When you jump, you're definitely at that 0 point. Yeah. I noticed that what seems to, you're saying a node point, I was thinking of it as a place of intersection, but it seems like you physically are in a certain place, and in that certain place, it's the easiest to actually jump dimensions and go to the one
from, because the node point is the 0 point, and it is a place of intersection. It's a convergence point. It's just another perspective of the overall grid or blueprint or matrix. So if you want to look at the blueprint, the pre-incarnate blueprint is a map. So say you are taking yourself to the point of view of the soul before you incarnate. So you're going to create a map of what you want to experience in your reality, in your incarnation. So you will create that map. Now that map will be a multi-dimensional map. So there will be many timelines and many choices. This map is a grid or a blueprint of who you are and what you are going to experience. This is in a linear perception. So in the true reality, there's no such thing, because it's all happening in the 0 point in one moment. But we have to perceive this in a linear sense because we experience linear reality. So we see it as happening before we're born. So we've got this big map before us, this blueprint, a quantum blueprint. So we'll think, right, I need to experience this particular situation in order to learn this. It's very simplified because every choice you make, every thought you have about any probable choice you might make creates another little branch in this map. So simplifying this, we're taking a point where we need to experience this situation in order to learn this. So in that timeline, I'm going to experience being a train driver. In this timeline, I'll experience working in a shop. in this timeline I'll experience being a dancer, and in this timeline I'll experience being a dog groomer. Okay, and all of these things are going to lead me to the same thing. I need
like all your choices.
really simplifying this massively.
Yeah.
Okay, so these are the separate timelines. Now, a node point is a convergence point, because this map doesn't move out in long streams of one-tracked movements. It's actually a great big, well, it's actually a dodecahedron, I believe, but it comes right in, and there are like time circles round. It isn't linear, it circles round. So there are convergence points. So a convergence point will be seen, a node point will be seen as all these timelines running towards the same place. So how that would look is, I need to experience being a train driver in order to learn this thing. And being a shopkeeper or a dog groomer or a dancer is not going to give me what I need. I must be a train driver. Therefore, being a train driver is I hope it's not in my timeline. But anyway, being a really bad example here. Being a train driver is in all my realities. It's in all my timelines, which means it's a node point. So what actually happens is, when you get to the station and you get on the train and you start driving that train, you are in a destined moment, and it will feel right to you. As I said, it's a pretty poor example, but let's give a better example. Let's look at relationships. So let's use that as an example instead. So say we've got a woman, a heterosexual woman, who is set to have a relationship with a man. So in this blueprint, she's got 4 different men in 4 different timelines who are all going to be her husband. And depending on what choice she makes in her reality, will lead her to the timeline of one of these 4 men that will be her husband. And that's the timeline she will experience depending on the choice she's made. Now, let's just say that we've got a partner for her that's been in other realities and other timelines, and that there's a spiritual connection between the 2 of them. So we've got this sort of twin flame energy thing going on. And so the only way that she and he can experience their reality is by coming together. Then we'd have a node point where it would be one partner, the same partner in all the timelines. That's the twin flame energy, if you like. So that's another example. What it means is when you hit a node point, it's a convergence of timelines. It's not that you are in a separate timeline where there is a parallel choice. It's a moment where all choices converge. So there is only one choice. So from one reality, there's no free will. You have no free will because it's already predetermined for you, and you have to make that choice in order to experience what you need to experience. However, the 9 say, and this is a good one, and they only said this to me a few days ago, when you experience no free will in the way that I'm talking, that is when you have the greatest free will. Yes. The reason for that is the desire for you to experience what's in the node point. There can be nothing that would be better for you than that. It will be your greatest desire, and it will be the greatest aspect of yourself that experiences that. So the node point is your ultimate free will, because it's what you would choose. It's what every aspect of you would choose. So it is
because you've already chosen it, right?
You've already chosen it. You have.
Oh, wow.
So there you have the node point, which is the 0 point. So when you're in that moment, so say you meet someone and it's like, I feel really connected to this person. I feel like I've done this before. I feel like I'm supposed to be doing this, and there's synchronicity, and that person says something just when you were thinking about it, and you're like, oh, wow. And maybe you've got the same surname, and maybe you've both got a daughter with the same name, and you've been through experiences at the same time. You are on a node point. And it can happen with talks you go to, books you read, pick up a book. It's a node point. Why? Because you had to read that book in every timeline in order to experience. But going down the shops to buy some bread and butter, it probably isn't a node point.
All of them. I see. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, unless you're going to the health shop and buying a particular herb that you need for all timelines. You will know when you start to resonate. So you go one step further, and what you can then do is change the blueprint. Now, normally in a linear sense, what you do is you live your life, you live your incarnation, you follow this blueprint. And if you are doing well in your incarnation, you'll be following the blueprint just as you laid it out for you. If you haven't done so well in your incarnation, you've veered off the edge of the blueprint. There is no edge really, you're always on it, but you veered off and you haven't met these experiences. You'd have to do another, either repeat your own incarnation, go back and incarnate back as yourself
or
again,
create another one,
or create a new one from a linear perspective.
Right.
So on a linear perspective, everything occurs prior to you being born. So what you would normally do is live that incarnation, and then when you leave that incarnation, when you go through the death experience, you then reevaluate everything, see what you have done and what you haven't done, and what you did and what you didn't do, and then create a new blueprint. And so you would change the blueprint. You remake the map in that life between lives moment. That's what you do on a steady incline of a reality. So it's like life is ticking along like this for you. The word for that is it's not stagnation, it's still growth, but it is I really don't know if there's any word to describe
just a flat line, just a steady,
steady reality, which is the reality for most people on most planets, until that person goes through an ascension experience, either in a small group or individually or collectively. When it's individual, their own life takes an incline like this. They are transcending upwards. They are ascending upwards. But the actual reality of consciousness of the planet is still on the incline. What's happening to us collectively right now, we're in the year 2017, we are in an incline planet-wide. We're in an incline collectively. So what that means is we do not have to go through the death experience in order to remake our map, to recreate the blueprint. We can do it from here. That is what ascension means. It means we get the memories back of our previous incarnations. We get the knowings of where we're going in the future and our future incarnations, or we choose where we want to go. We can jump timelines sideways into these parallel aspects of us. We can do all of this, and we can remake the map. We can recreate the blueprint from the physical point of view, from the physical perspective. And that's what the book Masters of the Matrix, that goes into matrix awareness, which teaches you to be aware of your matrix. What is the matrix? And it teaches you matrix mastery. There are techniques in the book that teaches you how to master the matrix. But this next book that I've just finished writing, which I've had lots of people write to me asking when it's ready, it's not ready yet, because although I finished writing it, I'm in the editing stages. So I'm editing, I'm proofreading, and so it's not ready yet. I'm getting it. I will have it ready as soon as I possibly can. That goes into matrix architecture. So it actually teaches you to construct your matrix, which then will give you more understanding and more insight into what that matrix is. Because once you start to construct it, you're using the language of light in a very profound way. When you construct your matrix visually, you are communicating with the DNA. The DNA understands the language of light because the DNA is the language of light, so it speaks it. So when you use a visual in a perhaps fifth dimensional sense, so you're using a visual of riding on a unicorn, the DNA understands what you're doing. You're riding on a unicorn and you find a pot of gold. So you might be telling the DNA that you want to bring abundance into your life, or whatever. You could use any visual that has form. The geometric visual is a sixth dimensional visual. It's even more profound. They all work, but the reason why we're going into the sixth dimensional visual is because there are many minds at the moment amongst the starseeds that are moving into that direction. The star seeds are moving into the geometric reality. They are seeing geometry. Many of them will have been seeing geometry for many years, especially indigo minds. These are analytical, inquiring individuals, hungry for knowledge on all levels. So when you create the matrix, when you construct the matrix, you're using the language of light in a very profound way. And you're basically saying to your DNA, I would like you to move into the crystalline structure, please. And as you visualize the matrix, as you build the matrix, you are building the crystalline structure. You are creating the crystalline matrix within the DNA. So it's going to happen anyway if you're a loving person, but you can create it yourself in a conscious way so that you process what you're doing and you understand the steps. So that's the sort of second book. It also goes into other stuff about our history and the fall of man and Atlantis and other things.
I'm so looking forward to this book. I mean, that's just awesome. And as you were sitting there talking, I was thinking to myself, first of all, I was never much for wanting to be in school. I was one of these kind of people that I seek knowledge. I loved reading. I loved learning, but I just felt that the school system was not where you were actually learning anything. So half the time I was in there denying. You learn something, you're like, nah, that doesn't make sense. Come on now. But I remember not caring for math at all. I always did well. So, I mean, I always got A's and B's. I didn't fail, but I just didn't like mathematics. So I remember in high school after I went through algebra, and there was this thing called geometry, right? And I thought, oh, Jesus, I got to do geometry this year. And I remember the first day in geometry, and I'm sitting in the class, and the teacher's talking and showing and talking, and he does some examples. And I thought, oh, that's not math. This is cool. I'm good with this. I get, I understand this. I'm fine with this. This is not math. You know, it's so funny. Like, and I had, you know, it just resonated with me. And then Algebra 2 came back into my life. But anyway, I definitely understand that. And so we're actually on 2 hours now. So I want to respect your time. And, you know, I could just talk to you forever. This is really good. I would love to invite you back to continue from time to time, if you would have me.
Yes.
Good. Thank you. So before we close out, I definitely would like for you to end on whatever you or the council would like to share with us. This could just be definitely an inspired moment, because I believe in the people who are going to be watching this are getting exactly what they'll need. I know this has just been a beautiful 2 hours for me. I've just enjoyed every minute of it. And I do thank you for your sharing. So I wanted to end it with you, you know, kind of letting us, you know, you have.
What I'd say is, I know it's tough for people right now. Star seeds and those who are not aware of spirituality in any way, it's tough right now. There's a lot going on this planet. The control structures are sort of not their agenda is not coming to fruition, so they are trying all sorts of machinations to try to create what they want to create. They are coming in from all angles, so it's looking very chaotic on this planet, especially within Western society, but outside of Western society as well. So I understand that, and it's really difficult for some people. And I would say that whilst one doesn't ignore what's going on that level, one needs to know and pay attention to get caught up in it, to the point where it draws you away from that 0 point. And it's normal, because especially with star seeds, they will be very compassionate. So when you see harm coming to other individuals, you will feel empathic with those individuals and feel compassionate and feel very sad. It's so easy to get drawn up, and it's good to feel compassion, and it's good to look at these situations. But if you get drawn into one situation intensely, it can draw you away from the overall mission, which is for star seeds right now to no longer hold back with their truth and knowing, but to deliver what they know. yes, it has to be in a controlled way. But I know you were saying earlier that before we started filming, you said that you need to come to a good place within yourself, a good balance before you start to, you know, deliver your teachings to others. And whilst that is true, I do feel that the star seeds, not all of them, but the majority of star seeds by now, even the children, are at a stage where they are ready to teach something, even if they haven't fully learned what they want to learn. And of course the children won't have done, because they've got a whole life in front of them. They are ready to teach something because they're in that flow of being a conduit. So there'll be wisdom coming through, and you don't need years and years and years of incarnation to be wise. You can be wise at the age of 2. You don't have to be sort of 45 or 50 before you're wise. You can be wise at 2 and 3 and 4 years old. You can be wise as a teenager. I've met many wise teenagers. You can be wise as a 20-year-old. So I would say to any starseed, now is the time to start to do whatever you can to assist in the spreading of this knowledge and awareness, whether it's writing a book, getting language of light artwork out there that triggers individuals, whether it's making music, whether it's getting on YouTube or some other website, or whatever it is that you're here to do. You've all got something. So every starseed is like a shining light. Every aware starseed is has an abundance of information and assistance waiting in them to share. And this movement now, this year, needs to go what's the word? Stratospheric?
Stratospheric. That's work. Stratospheric. Yeah, definitely.
Let the starseed movement go stratospheric. That's what I would say. Yeah.
Oh my God, that's awesome. And thank you, because that was a personal reminder to myself, because for so long, I've just not been in obedience with putting what comes to me out. I mean, I just have a lot of my information comes through the automatic writing. So when I know that I can start hearing, if I pick up a pen, it just flows, you know. Oftentimes I got to try to figure out how to read it once I've done it, but yeah, that's a work in progress. But so for years, I just have these folders of writings and but my artwork with it. And, you know, my,
now
group,
is the time.
Yeah, they say put it out. And I've actually created oracle cards. They're called speaker cards, and they have the artwork on them with some of the light language. And I'm actually now have them with the printer, and I'm starting to put these out. I'd love to send you a deck, because I know that you've done. These are and they're just images. They're just, and just get your feedback, because so it's time, and I too have overanalyzed. And feel like, oh, I have to have this right, and I have to have that right, because I'm so analytical. I got to do this, got to do. And then after all of that, I'll say, "Now, are you sure?"
And that's
so thank you. Yeah, thank you for being a reminder to myself and to the viewers. Just like, if you're feeling it, step out and, like you said, get it going. That's just so important.
Totally, because there is strength in numbers, and that is what we have. That the other groups, no matter how powerful they might think they are, they do not have the strength in numbers, the compassion that we have, the understanding of the unity that we have. We know we're part of a family. We know we're part of a gathering. And that's what this is about now. It's really, really time to bring that into action and do whatever you can to get this information out there in whatever way. If it's third dimensional information and you're talking about, you know, the media, corruption in the media, or whether you're discussing politics, or whether you're discussing healing, you know, hypnosis, or whether it's channeling, and whether you're communicating with extraterrestrials, whatever it may be, you will have something. If you are a starseed, you will, by this time, in this time, looking at the collective energy of humanity, you will be ready to teach something. You will be ready to do something.
Awesome. So would you, so people can connect with you at magentapixie.com, right? And then your YouTube is also the same name, Magenta Pixie.
Yes, Magenta Pixie.
Right.
Just go on YouTube and type Magenta Pixie and you'll find my YouTube. Yeah.
Okay. Well, we'll keep up with you. Thank you so much once again for joining us in this couple hours. This was so awesome. And I just can't thank you enough. I'm looking forward to getting so many of the comments. My viewers are going to love this. It's just going to really take them down some pathways that I know they're excited about being able to go down. So we will close the show out. This is Robyn McClendon, Circle Healing Network. My guest today was Magenta Pixie. Thank you so much for all your sharing. And we will, I'll put your information at the bottom of this video as well for people to find you. And until next time, you know, I bid you lots of love and light and love, my friend, right? And I'll close. Thank you. I'll close out and then I'll come back. Bye-bye, guys.
Bye.